All right, so we'll continue to finish that demonstration of a very first simple web application. I spent a lot of time last time trying to explain to you what's the difference between a website and also a web application. Okay, we're trying to build an application. It's a server program. It's always on. It understands the HTTP protocol. All right, and then eventually you also need to deploy that to the cloud, right? So we'll finish all of those steps in the coming lessons. All right, so quick recap. Okay, here is a Python backend we already built. All right, so let me try to run this one. Go through the code again. This is our little mini database. Okay, once again, we're looking at this $5 example. Give a maximum budget, and then you get all the return results, the food items you can buy under that budget. Okay, so we actually need to, this is our little UI design, and that was the architecture we put together. And I explained to you, this is called a three-tier web architecture. So front end, backend server, and also backend database. Okay, so this one here is a very simple dummy concept of our database. It's not a real database system, but it serves the same purpose. All right, so and then we have our function. This is the most important function here to search. But I showed to you that if you just write a Python code, it's only executable within Python environment, and people cannot easily run this or access this one from outside of your computer, right? So we want to turn this into a server. And that's when I started exploring everything about a server. Building a server is pretty sophisticated. So we get some help from this library called Flask. Okay, because we're using Python. Flask is a code framework that already does all this server always on, internet connection, understanding the HTTP protocol, all this heavy work. They done that. So we just import it, create a server program, run the server with a port number, and then the most important part to configure is something called request mapping, right? So we put an annotation here. We're telling the server, if someone visiting this URL, and please run this function here. Okay, so let me just run this code very quick. All right. So this one, oh, this one's already used. I assume the code is still working. All right, so this is the server, and we are gonna go with this search, and I'm gonna type a budget. All right, so that's where you can see all the results. Okay. Last time I also showed you that if you do a different URL, for example, here is welcome, it simply return a string. However, I put a simple HTML code as a string. Okay, so if I do welcome, it's going to map to the other function, and that's going to return you the actual string content, because the string is HTML, so the browser will render all the format and stuff. Okay, so that's where we were last time. Now, so far, we kind of finished our little backend. Okay, so go back to this three-tier architecture. So this is done, this is done. Okay, we need a better UI to do this. Honestly, the functionality is already working as long as you know this URL. Okay, you simply just need to search. Okay, you search for $5, you search for $15, and then you can already get a result. But this is not a good looking site. Most web application, you need to have a very intuitive and very simple way for user to interact with. So that's why you need to build all the UI stuff, the front end. Okay. Now, since we're talking about web application, okay, so the front end, as I mentioned here, are mostly built with these three primary languages. Okay, so they're HTML, CSS, and to configure the style, and also the JavaScript. It's normally the very important part that connects everything, make everything dynamic and interactive. Okay, so we'll build a very simple example. So this is our UI design. Okay, go a little bit bigger for this. Think about there's logo, there's an input box, there's a button, and then some kind of things you can use to show the results. Okay, so in order to do that, we'll need to create a new file that is going to be a HTML file. Okay, we'll call this at index.html. All right. By default, they already provide some of the very simple tags here. We're not going to go through the very basic things about HTML. I think the best resources here to learn is the W3 School. Okay, and they have some of the HTML lessons here. I like this one because it's super simple, short to read. It's all just simple examples, okay, to tell you what this one does. You can go ahead and try this yourself, and you can just change things here, and then rerun this one, and then you can see the changes here. Okay, you can follow the lesson. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all the details here, but the resource is all there. All right. So as a web page, you often have a tag called HTML as a kind of a the root tag to include everything. HTML is a tag language. All right. So everything is tag based. You have a starting tag. You must have opening, closing tag. Like this one has a head, and there is a slash head. There is a body. There is a slash body. And then HTML tag is the root one. Every HTML file has this tag. And then there's two sub-child you can have. One is called head, which normally record the meta information. For example, the title of the page. Okay, so this is going to be our project title called $5 lunch. Okay, and the body contains the main section for all the UI. So you put all the content here. Okay, welcome. All right, something like this. All right, so that's the basic setup. However, we're gonna build things based on the design here. So we need a little logo here, and we need a input box. So I'm just gonna start typing. Okay, so I'm gonna use something called H1, standing for the headline. Okay, the headline number one, which is a very big font size. Okay, you will see this title shows up at the big font. All right. Actually, we can probably run this one right now. If you just simply open this file in the browser, all right, so that's where you can see what that looks like. All right, and if I don't do the H1, it's going to show as a simple regular text. So that's just a default text, very small, but I put that as a heading. Okay, so it automatically gives some big style, big sizes. All right, so the next one is, let's see, our design. Okay, it's an input box. Okay, so in HTML, there's something called input. Okay, always do the closing one. And input, there's some different type. What type of input you're giving. Okay, you're picking a date or email, or in this case, we're just doing something like a very simple, just a, you can do a number, but I might just do a text. Okay, which is very commonly used input format. So if you go back here, go to the page, show it, you can see there is a input box shows up. Okay, so right now we don't worry too much about the styling. Okay, so just make sure all the widgets are there. All right. After that, we need a button. Okay, try there the button. All right, and the button you can put a name here. We'll do a search, a save, go back to the browser, and that's the button. Okay. All of this widget, I just know some of the very basic stuff, so I remember those. If you don't know it, then Google it, or now just use Gen AI, use ChatGPT to ask. Okay, so they can give you the answers pretty quickly. Finally, you should have some kind of results, okay, section here to display all the results. If you think about this as some kind of a, kind of bullets, a list, right? So there's something called a list, and then there is something called an ordered list. And then from there, you can include a lot of list items. So for example, this one will be Panda Express. All right, and then let's just test it first. All right, so that's one item. And then if you go with more, and that shows you more results. Okay, yeah, so that's how it works. So HTML is the language that you can use to specify all the UI widgets, components, and also with a little bit very basic styling. Okay, for example, I mentioned you can make these things the size bigger if you change a different tag. And last time I also showed you we can do a italic, right? So that's using the other tag, which is the EM, right? So for example, if we want to go with that again, I don't know if we can try this one here. Yeah, if we do EM, all right. If we do that, go back here, and that goes to italic, right? So very basic, simple styling. but you can't do more than that, okay? Because HTML, the tags are mostly for you to put all the widgets there, okay? So, but anyway, that's the first, style of the page. All right. So before going more on the pages, okay, we got to run this one in the server. Right now, if you can see, I'm simply just open this file as a static file in my browser. Okay, you just see how it looks like. But when you run the server, even though they're in the same folder, okay, the server doesn't know there is HTML file, and the server doesn't know how to serve that file because everything you want to serve has to specify here as a mapping. Okay, just like this one. You have a welcome slash URL. That's why you can see this. Now we need to do another one to return a file. Okay, a static file. Okay, so that one, I assume you will need some kind of function. Okay, let me write it here at the top. Okay, I'll call this start index. Okay, something like this. All right, so this one has to return something. Um, honestly, right here, I forgot how to do this. Okay, so but this one should be pretty easy to figure out. Okay. Normally you just Google it. Okay, so Python Flask return index HTML. Okay, something like this, and then you just go to find examples. That's the old way, right? You can imagine that you go here, look at can we see some of the correct answer? Um, Not really here. Um, Maybe something here. Let's see if they provide anything. Not really. All right, this looks like a good example. All right. Okay, so this is what we're looking for. Okay, so you see that function here is going to return something called render underscore templates and then the file. Okay, we're going to try that. So render template and which is the index.html. All right. However, the render template, that's something you have to import. So we'll go to the top, put it here. That's all from the code framework. Okay. All right, so let's try to run this again. I don't know, this one can restart. Okay, so, oh, by the way, we haven't defined the URL yet. So this time I'm going to just use the default. Okay, if you do a slash or don't put anything, it by default go to the index. Okay. All right. So I think we need to restart this app somehow here. We need to terminate the old one. Okay, so well to make it simple, I'm just going to change a different port number. Okay, I'll keep the old ones. So I'll do a 5050 port. I'll rerun app. Okay, so this time you got to change the port. I go 5050. All right, and something is wrong. Okay, so we are trying to visit the URL and something is wrong. Let's actually find out what's wrong here. And then if you look at that logs, okay, so a lot of information going here. And then if we go to the bottom here, um, something about not finding the index.html file, which is right here. Okay, so let's just see if we miss anything from documentation. Maybe the way we place the index or has to be go somewhere. So it looks like we need to create a directory called templates. Maybe that's the reason. And okay, so there's no specification about a template, but we're gonna follow their requirements. Okay, so we'll create something called templates. All right, and then we're gonna put this file right here. Okay, so just a folder change. Maybe that's something that they expect you to do. I'm gonna restart the server to see if we get any luck. Okay, going back here. Okay, this is the new server. I refresh and it shows up. Okay, so this time, guys, so this one is the server. Okay, not the static file. And I don't put any URL. The old one's still there. If I do welcome, it's go to here. If I do search, okay, it's still there. But if I don't do anything, and that's just gonna go open the index.html file. Okay, so that's exactly what we want. All right. So this step is very important because now you are putting that front-end page together with your backend files. Okay. However, none of these functions, if I do 10, I click on search, nothing happened. Right now, you can see these are all hard coding. Okay. So the next thing to do right now is to connect both. Okay. So you have the front-end page is done. Your server is ready. You can see the server has this URL called search slash. Okay. Now, the way to implement the interaction is that the moment you click on the button here, okay, you need to know what you're typing. You should know that number, and then you're sending that number to the server by calling that URL, which is the search slash budget. The server runs something, it returns all this text you see right now. If you go here to do the search, all right, so they give you this. But we don't want a user to see all of this text, right? So we want user to see the rendered ones as a nicely listed items. So there will be some kind of interaction going on at the moment that you click on a button. It interacts with the server, returns the results, receive it, and then render those under the list. Okay. See that interaction part. Whenever you are building things on a web application, in the UI, you realize you need some kind of interaction. Okay, you're not just open the page, reading stuff. You need some actions, a task to finish, and you need to know that just having HTML is not going to be enough. Okay, you need something more powerful. Obviously, you need some code here to execute, to take care of that task. Okay, so that's when you need JavaScript. So we'll come back to the CSS again. Okay, JavaScript is really the one that does all this heavy logic functions, tasks for you to interact with different parties. And in this case, mostly JavaScript is rendering the front end, it's going to talk to the backend. So JavaScript is the one that does this whole thing. All right. So I'm going to show you some very simple JavaScript to implement that feature. In order to do this whole process a lot easier, okay, so we're going to import a very famous JavaScript called jQuery. So jQuery is also kind of a code framework. JavaScript has all the default grammar, everything functionality, but jQuery made a lot of things much easier to do by introducing this little dollar sign. They make a lot of functions shorter, easier for you to call. It's a framework or it's kind of utility. Okay, so it's almost like in Python you do Flask. Okay, same thing. So first of all, we have to import that jQuery to our code base. Okay, so normally the way you do it is that you just copy that little URL here, and you can see there is a script, right? A line here, trying to import the source code from this URL, which is hosted somewhere by Google. So I'm going to copy this one, and then all you need to do is put it to the top here in the head. All right, so that's your little JavaScript. Okay, so very important. This line of code does similar things just like the import right here. From this package, I want to import this. In this case, from this server library, I want to import this whole jQuery library. Okay, that's it. And then this script part here embedded all the script coding. For web pages, most of the script we're using JavaScript. So I'm going to use a simple way. Okay, I'll just do a very simple script here just to do a JavaScript. Okay, now the best practice, all of you know that we should actually do a different file to save all the code. But here, to make the whole thing a lot easier and simpler to watch, I'll just put it into the script. Okay. Now let's actually do this logic. Okay, so the logic right here is this. Step one, if you click on once, click on the search button, grab the budget value. Okay. Step two, we need to call the backend server URL. Okay, to get the return results. And then once we have the result, we're going to render the results. under the list. So these are the steps. Okay, we're going to execute from our JavaScript here. So we're going to write the code to do those. All right. So let's see, how do we do the first one? So the first one is to grab the value of that input box. Okay. However, you only want to do that when you click on a button. So in this case, you have to configure an event. So for example, if I go to the button, there's something called onClick. Okay. And then basically means that whenever you click on the button, you're going to run something. Okay. So I'm going to call the function. The function is called just search. Okay. Something like this. All right. How do you define a function here? Well, in JavaScript, you define a function like here, called a search. And it should be something like this. Okay. I might be wrong with the grammar. Okay. But let's just try it. To prove this one works, okay, I'll do a simple print. In JavaScript, you do console.log. Okay. Button is clicked. Okay. All right. Something like this. Let me try to rerun this. All right. So I go to our page and I go to the root. And you need to open that little debugger window right here. So you see there's a console. So everything, the output will be displayed right here. Okay, so I'm gonna just type something and click on the button. As you can see, the moment I click on the button, that message is printed. See, this thing happens after the page is rendered, I start to interact with. So that's where JavaScript is playing its role. Okay, it does all this interaction stuff. All right, so this is good stuff. All right, so moving forward, what we're gonna do is gonna grab that budget value, okay? So the budget value is gonna be inputted right here in the input, right? So what we wanna do is we wanna find out where the input is and then, using the JavaScript to read that value, okay? So normally when you try to do this, you're kind of manipulating or interacting with a specific widget, right? So in order to do that, what you do is normally I configure an ID for that because for HTML, you have a lot of tags. You have to know which one you're doing. So the best way is to do an ID. I would say that this is just a budget, input. Okay, something like this. All right. So using that, well, you then can use a reference to that ID and then to read the value. Okay. So that's where the jQuery could help you. So I think the jQuery can do something like this. They will say, you want to do this ID called budget input, put that with a pound and then string and use the dollar sign. That's going to give you the actual reference. So they will find where that tag is. Okay. And then from there, you can then grab the value. I kind of remember something like this, dollar value. So I can't guarantee. Okay, we'll run this one. It doesn't work. I'll go ahead and search the reference. And then once I know the value, I'm going to save that into a variable. Okay. In JavaScript, you use a variable here to declare a new variable name. You don't have to store the type. And then after that, let me just confirm I can get the value. So this, I'll just print budget. Or do it more the clear ways, call it budget. Something like this. All right, I'll save it. Okay, let's see if it works. Okay, so there might be something wrong. So let's see. So go back here, refresh, and I'm gonna type 100. I click on search. Very good. So button click and immediately a print out budget, which is 100 because that's what I type. If I do 99, I search and that prints 99. And if I do, $10 and then I search, that prints 10. Okay, so this little code here, that's the job. Okay, so I use the jQuery to locate that ID because I gave that ID right here, and then you call this function called value, and then to read the value, and then save that here into the budget. Okay, that's all. Okay, obviously this kind of thing you just need to search for documentation, or obviously you use ChatGPT, they will give you this right away. All right, so that's step one. Okay, so I'm gonna put it right here. After that, we're gonna do the second step, which is call the server to get a return. This part here, you already know how to do it yourself, right? So if you go to the server, okay, to do the search and then you do the budget, you already know how to get this, okay? If I do 5, you got this. But that's a manual way. Okay, you go to the browser, you type the URL, you get the results. Now we want to do this with the code. Okay, we want you to just here click on a button. The code does that calling process. The code actually receives the results so that you can use the results. That's what we want to do. All right. Now, that's another reason we want to import something called jQuery because jQuery can do that pretty easily. Okay, you would do something called Ajax. Okay, they have some kind of maximum in jQuery that do this kind of Ajax call allows you to use the JavaScript code to make that URL call. Okay, so that code I may not be remembered. Okay, so I will just go ahead and do ChatGPT. So this you guys should already have a lot of experiences. Show me a sample jQuery code to make a like URL call for my backend server, which is /search/budget, something like this. Okay. This is not the best prompt, but it should give you something very quickly. So as you can see, they gave you pretty much the full code. Okay, so this thing, something we already did. You have to import that script, and then inside the script, what we do, they also have a function, and this is the core part. Okay, so you do an Ajax call, and then if you just read this one, you can pretty much get it. Okay, the URL is what the URL looks like. Okay, the search, and then you have a budget. And then the method here is called a get. Okay, so every time when you call a HTTP, I didn't explain this concept in detail, but HTTP had different kind of methods. Okay, so some of the typical ones are called a get, another one called a post. All right, so get means that you're calling this server, this URL, you want to get something, you want to read something. And a post just means that you want to write something. For example, you upload a photo to your social media, and you're going to call a post API method. Okay, that's a difference. Okay, and the data type means that the you're expecting a kind of a JSON return. The JSON, if you don't know it, that kind of a format. You have all the brackets, key value pair. That format is something called JSON. Okay, you will see this one more often, and then then after that you have something called a success, which means that if this call is successfully executed, what are we going to do? So you put it to function here, and you're going to print that data. And by comparison, you also have something called error, which means that if the URL call is not successful, and then we're going to run this one to print out what the error is. Okay, so this function looks like very long, but it's a very standard way to make a network call. Okay, so I'm going to copy this code. Let's put it in my code. I'll fix the indentation. Okay, let's go through this again. jQuery.ajax call. And URL, we have to specify that is search. And this one just to embed it, that budget variable, which we already have. That's the budget. All right. Method to the get, return the JSON, success. We're going to just print the data, what we're getting. Okay. And if something's wrong, we'll also print the error. Well, pretty much does what we want. Okay. Let's see how it works. So rerun the code, go back to the browser, go back to my code, refresh, make sure the code is updated. I call $10 and I click on search. Okay, so as you can see, it printed out the success, and then if I open it, that automatically format everything. You got a Subway, Starbucks, and also Round Table Pizza. Okay, so if you do here, if you do 10, you're getting exactly the same thing, Subway, Starbucks, and Round Table Pizza. The difference is now this part of code, this call was executed with the JavaScript code. I didn't manually do it. So they run this little piece of code to do this. All of this code is JavaScript. Okay, see, JavaScript just does all this mostly like background, dynamic, interactive kind of tasks. Okay, HTML, they are static. They show you the widget. The JavaScript help with different parts. Okay. Now, once we have the data, okay, we want to show the data into our pages, right? If you remember, our page right now has all the hard-coded stuff, okay? Has all the hard-coded stuff. So, which means you can think about the code logic is that since this one, you got a list, right? You got a list 3 items. We just want to add a 3 item to here. So in order to do that, we're going to remove the hard-coded one because you don't want to show that all the time. And then since this is the kind of a container, so I might want to give an ID so that you can control and manipulate this one. So I'll call this results list. Okay. And obviously from here, we might need to have a loop, okay, to add this to the list one by one. Okay, so let's try this. I'm gonna do a loop first. Okay. The data should be a list. Okay. Let me try my code first. Okay. If the doesn't work, I'm gonna fix the syntax. Okay. Since this is JavaScript, I still remember something. Okay. So and we got a lens. Is that the correct call? With the tier. Yes, yes. Sorry. Yeah. Because there's all of a sudden this one doesn't have the syntax highlighting, it's just not getting used to it. And then yeah, we got a loop here, and then let's try to print the item one by one. So the data all right. So I'm gonna comment out this one, okay, so that you can know that you only see this record here. And I will just here I'll do a testing so that you know that's coming from this loop. Okay. So let's rerun this, go back here and refresh. I do 10 and search. Okay, something is wrong. Length is not a function, so I probably need to do this. Right, so just rerun this and refresh. I do 10 again, click on search. Very good. So now you can see it prints 3 objects. Okay. The nice thing about JSON is that the JavaScript automatically understand that format. They will turn that into an object. Because if you turn that into the object, then you can do this. Because you know that here, so every object has 2 attributes. One is called a name, one is called a price, right? So what you can do is that you can do name, and then you can do price. So you can use this dot to reference the specific attribute. All right, so let me rerun this and go back here, do 10 again, and search. As you can see, this time we explicitly print all the attributes one by one from each object, so that you can show, you can see how the JavaScript can manipulate all the content, all the objects. All right, and all we need to do right now is somehow add that into here. Okay, so that part I kind of forgot. Okay, so I'll go here. So how to use jQuery to add a new this one called a list item to an ordered list container. All right, just try to show an example here. All right, so they use something called append. Pretty simple. I'm gonna copy this one here. All right, so we're gonna append this. Oops. All right, so same way, this one is the reference. So this is called a result list, because that's how I name this ID right here, right? Result list. And I'm gonna append some kind of a new item, and I need to replace that with the content I got, which is name and price. I'll do a okay. So name and price. Maybe do a colon. All right. So yeah, coming from jQuery. Okay, so test it first. Rerun, go back, refresh, do 10, click on the button, and that shows up. Okay, name, price, name, price. That's exactly what we do. Okay, we do 100, and that's gonna show more. And then if we do 5, and that's gonna show 1. Okay, but obviously you don't want to just save all the results here, right? So every time you have to clear that. So the moment before you actually run this one, you have to just clear the whole list. So I go here, result list. Let me try clear. Okay, I feel that should be the right one. So refresh, go back here, $10. Nope, that's not a good function. All right, so how to use the jQuery to clear all the items under an ordered list. Okay, empty. So this is called empty. All right, so rerun and go back here. So 100, you got everything. If I go 5 and you do 1, okay? If you do 10 and that's on the 3. Okay. All right, so that's the step 3. Okay, I'm just moving the comment here, and I'll put it here. All right, so and then let me clean up the code a little bit. And now we're done with that function. Okay. Recap the logic. Okay, click on the button, grab the value. Use JavaScript and jQuery to help you to do that. And then you make a call. If the call is successful, that's when we do the logic of reading and rendering. Okay, so JavaScript does the actual task. To finish this example, we don't like the UI. Okay, so this one doesn't look very good. Okay, so we want the colors, we want more styling, and that's when you need to use something called a CSS. Okay, so you could also put the CSS here. We'll do that one first. Okay, so for CSS, again, you do W3 schools. You can follow the tutorial just to learn everything. So let's find out where we put the CSS files, right? So this one, they reference the file. How can I just want to put that directly. Yeah, it's called style. Okay, so I will do this at top here. So I will do something called style. Okay, so everything about the styling you can configure here. Now, CSS has a lot of different configurations, okay, to do different things you want. I just want to show you something very simple. So for example, I want to control the title, okay? And all the web stuff works the same way. If you want to control something, you want to manipulate something, you find a reference first. Okay, so what is that heading? Well, that one is something called H1, right? So what I will do is right here, I will do H1. Okay, that's specify what you want to specify. Okay, so I go back here. Let's see. For H1, you can specify something called a color. Okay, very simple. I would do a bracket. Okay, very simple color, and let's do a red. Looks like that's actually kind of supported. Okay, and then do a semicolon. Very simple. You can see this one only is just a kind of a configuration. Okay, attributes, color, stuff. Okay, so let's rerun. Go back to the server. Refresh, and that become red. Okay, because we told the HTML that for the style, please refer to here. Okay. Obviously, they have a lot more things we can do besides the color. Let's see. Headings, what you can do. Maybe obviously the sizes you can do. They have something called a font size. Okay, let's try that. They use 60 pixel. All right. So going back here, let me just refresh. Maybe I have to restart. Okay, so 60, that's a lot bigger. Okay, and then you can change back to 40. And that goes back. Control the size. All right. For the buttons, all right, CSS button, input, text, style. Just to see some of the examples. All right, for input, they have the width that to cover the whole, probably the whole length of the screen. And let's see what else they can provide. There's some padding and margin and input, the box sizing, all of this. Let me just copy this. Okay, I'm just copy this one here. Okay. All right. So they're saying that if your input type is a text, which is the one we use, make the whole width bigger and padding and margin and all everything. Okay, so refresh. Let's see what that's going to look like. So going back here, refresh. Yeah, so that's going to take the whole width. The reason they do the 100% because I think it's more responsive, right? So if you go here, if I go here, all right, so that actually gave you automatically, responsive. Okay, that's the input. All right, so What else? And obviously you can make the border around. Let's add this one here. Okay, refresh. All right, so a little bit wrong here. If you click on that, the color got changed. So all these little details. All right, so that's how you can make this one nicer. All right. And then obviously you can do button, you can do all the other things. All right, so that's how you control CSS. All right, but then to summarize, okay, so in the past, whenever people talk about web development, okay, so it's basically called three important language and tool to use. Sometimes they call three swords, okay, they're different terms, okay, but they work close with each other, okay. HTML does all the widgets, the text, and CSS control the look, and then JavaScript does all the interactions. Okay, so they have different roles and job. But obviously, every language, there's so many things you can learn, and this one here, I'm just touching the very, very basic. There's different ways you can reference them, the different configurations. Okay, so let me just cheat a little bit. Okay, so I'll just say that let the here, please configure a simple but professional style for the following um, uh, search page HTML. I will put the CSS directly in the index.html. Okay, I'll just put this is a little URL I have. I just want the ChatGPT to help me to do some decorations. Okay, so let's see what kind of a style they can generate. I do a lot of fancy stuff. They have this root, probably something about the whole page, and they have some box sizing, and then they even control the body, what the body looks like, the page looks like, the H1 italic, and then search. And this is pretty sophisticated. Okay, so but yeah, if you want your page to look nicer, you definitely need something like this. Let's see what that's gonna look like. I'm gonna copy this. Okay. Yeah, I'll just copy the whole thing. All right. So that's the whole tag. I'm gonna copy that to replace the little styles I have. All right. A lot of things going on. Refresh and go here. Yeah, a lot better, right? So I do a $5 search, and that's one. I do 100, and so all the function. The nice thing about this kind of a split of languages that it doesn't affect the others, right? So the function the same, the widget is the same. This one only did the UI, right? And then JavaScript only controls the logic. So that's the good thing about splitting the tasks. All right. Yeah. So that's how things are working together. Okay. Let's make just one more change. All right. So if you understand this whole structure, okay, this is a very basic version. And normally you want to add things on top of it. Okay. And then every time you want to make a change, you have to think about what are the things I need to change. Okay. Sometimes it's just a very basic UI change. You just add it. You just go to the front end pages. But sometimes most of the changes you deal with are both front and the back end. So for example, I want to return a image for each of the food. Okay. This just text is showing a little bit bored. I want to show some more fancy, rich content. I want to put a URL for that image. Okay. So in order to do that, well, you got to recall your whole architecture. Okay. So database must have those images, and then the server should return those. And finally, your friend then need to know how to render those images. So it's a complete change of changes. So let's actually start from the database first. Going back to my code, what I want to do is I will do something called a image URL. Okay, I'll just save a URL. That's easier. So Subway, let's find an image. Okay, so I will do this one here. I'll try to do a smaller size. Okay, I'll try to do a smaller. Yeah, let's just start with this one. I'll copy the URL. I will save it here. All right, so this one should be working. In the same way, let me get the attribute ready first. Okay, so this is Starbucks. Copy the address. And we have Panda Express. All right, finally, the pizza. Okay, so database got the things ready. And then we're gonna work on the backend. Otherwise, now if you just actually, you know what? Now you don't have to change too much because if you call it, it should give you everything. So I do this search, as you can see, besides the price, the name, and now you got a new attribute called image URL because you're simply just dumping and returning everything. Okay, so now it looks like the backend is ready. However, the front end is not ready. If you do this one, it's not gonna show you that. Okay, even though the data are there, right? But you have to use this. So we go to here because you're not even rendering that image yet. Okay, so because right now everything you do is just a little item here with text. Okay, so if you want to do image, you need to do another one, which is the image tag. So just show you one example here. Okay, how to do an image. So you go here called image. Okay, and then you do a source, and then you put a URL. For example, I put this one here. Oops. Right, refresh, and then that's how you render the image. Okay, so you just use a image tag here. Okay, so if you understand that, what we want to do here is instead of just sending this one, you also want to add, let's actually break this down so that's easier to see it. Okay, so we might need to add another one, which is the image tag. All right, and you have to do a source. Okay, that's where you put all the URL. Okay, so we gotta be a little bit careful on that little string here. Okay, so this one is called image URL because that one is already returned from the backend. Let's see what that looks like. The format probably not quite good, but let's see. Going back here, rerun this. Wait, I saw. Let's delete this one. All right, so I do $10. All right, so now you see there is the Subway pricing, there's the image, and Starbucks, there's the image. Oops. Okay, and then finally the pizza had the image. All right, but obviously we need to control the size. Okay, so that part you will need to add things here. Okay, so let's just ask ChatGPT. All right, so we are returning the image in each the list item using, please add one more style to make sure the image size is consistent and fit a regular like a list view. Basically not too big. All right. So they will need to do something about the style here. All right, so they specify because they understand we have a result list. So they do this. All right, let's just add this into our style. I'll put this one at the bottom. All right, save, rerun this, go back to the server. All right, so $100, and you got us 4 items. The image, the sizes are well controlled, and then you do 5, search, and it's right here. All right, and then if you do 10, and it's all this. All right, so that's how you make a change. So depending on the change you're making, it might touch just the backend database, or it will do everything. Okay, maybe the front end. So this example is really simple, okay, but I think it clearly shows you all the major components. But later on, as you move on to do more things, for example, I want to do a login, I want to manage users and permissions, I want to do some interaction, different navigation for the different pages. That's when the things are getting more complicated. However, I suggest that let's pause that a little bit. Don't worry too much about that. Okay. I do want you to be able to build something similar to this one at this kind of a level or complexity. And then next time, what I want to do is to show you the database stuff. Okay. Because right now we just use the very basic local file. I want to show you how to use some kind of MongoDB to save all the data. So you have a professional database. And after that, I want to show you how to do deployment so that you can connect everything together to finish that full stack, okay, job I mentioned earlier, okay, development of the front end, back end, and also deployment. Okay, then after that, well, you have went through the whole cycle of building a web application, and then I think you are ready to start your AI to build more things you want. All right, so that's all I want to share. Any questions? Yes.
I have a question on the proposal slides. It says we're required to do a video. Do we have to do a video?
Yes. So everyone please do a video, but you don't have to show the video in your presentation because that's probably going to take too long. Summarize it. Okay. I just want to make sure you actually do talk to someone. Okay.
Let's say you showed us an example of the Minecraft thing that Window made. That was like a problem that she had, right? And so if we had a similar thing, like a problem that involves us, what we want to solve, what would that video contain? Would it just be us talking about it? Would we have to involve someone else?
Yes. So yeah, good question. So even this is your problem, because if you have that problem, I'm sure there are some of the peers who share similar experience will also have similar problem. That's the goal because we don't want you to just assume that's a problem that exists. You need to verify that. So the customer discovery, the practice, just serve that purpose. You have to make sure it's a real problem. Remember the example I showed you from the AR projects? We saw that's a problem. We're serious. Okay, that's not a joke. We spent money. We went there to do the demo. We flew to their office to do the demo. That's exactly what we prepared. But it turned out that's not a real problem because you don't talk to the retail people. You don't know what they need. Because that's the goal. So it is probably your idea, but the interview serves to help you to verify that problem exists. But be careful. You don't want to go there to say, oh, do you think this is the problem for you? That's a very bad way to interview. And even worse, you don't want to say, oh, I want to build this web application. How do you think about that idea? They're going to say, yeah, pretty good, right? That's useless. So the interview is more like asking and explore their experiences. You kind of guide them. Okay, like I showed you the example. Okay, well how do you actually drive to school? How many days do you come to campus? And what time your classes? How's the traffic, by the way? And where do you park? Okay, on average, how many minutes do you spend on parking? And if you don't find parking, what do you do? You just ask all this experience and then try to find a detail to verify that's actually the problem. And a lot of the time, by doing this one, you can find a lot of things that's unexpected. Normally, that's the valuable thing. Yeah. So if you Google something called customer discovery, that's what the business school teaches. It basically means interview to verify. Yeah. And at the end, you can tell them what you are trying to build. That's fine, but that's not the most important part of the interview. Okay. Yeah.
So it has to be two people that are in the video as well?
So do at least 2 interviews. Okay. If they don't want to do the video audio, it's fine. Yeah. Yeah. Try that because it makes everything formal. Okay. It pushes yourself to do it. If I don't require that, you probably, half of you probably won't do it. Just assume it. So it's fine. Just do it. Okay. It really helps you to, if you do it the right way. Okay. You really need to do the right way. Don't talk anything about your project. You ask for experiences. Yeah. All right.
About how long do you want video?
The shorter the better. I think 1 minute, maybe 1 minute. Yeah, you can always cut it, but I wouldn't expect everyone to play it, okay, because that's gonna take too long. In the past, because we got a team project, so we would just play everything. Now try to probably summarize it. Okay, maybe summarize the things you find unexpected, right? So that's something interesting to see. All right. All right, cool. Any other questions? Okay, so everything I'm sharing these 2 days, okay, the building this stuff, you guys need to try this. The reason I use Python, all this very basic stuff, is because most of you already know this. We don't use like React, we don't use Next.js. I'm not expert at that either. So this is something that you can also do the same. Okay, try that as soon as you can. No, that's our goal. Okay, you don't want to go to the AI right away because at the end you don't even know what's going on in the backend stuff, or how the things are connected. That's probably not going to work for long term. All right, so I'll probably put together some kind of assignment for you to build something similar for this. Okay. By the way, the videos are uploaded. Okay, to that the circle site. Okay, so if you have any feedback, let me know. I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to manage all the content. All right, so on Thursday, let's come back on Thursday again. Okay, I'll show you the database stuff. Okay. All right, sounds good, guys.